Hey, you guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven, accompanied by Queen Taylor, and today I learned that I have a pet peeve. After 833 videos that I've ever recorded for YouTube, I've never not had shoes on. And we just tried to record with Peter K without shoes, and no, never again.
He was like, I gotta go get my shoes.
I gotta get my freaking shoes.
I gotta get my shoes.
What are you doing?
Gotta get my shoe.
Something about it. I need weight on my feet. I don't know.
I need my shoes for balance.
Today, we're going to be taking a look at 3 American myths we don't believe anymore after living in Europe from Scott and Nancy.
I was gonna say from Scott and Nancy.
But so we're going to let Scott and Nancy tell us what's going on. What are these 3 American myths? I think I already know what they are. The fact that we've already paid just as much taxes, but we don't get free health care because it all goes to our military and our government doesn't seem to care. That's what I think is happening.
Very rhymey and nice. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't realize that we pay, if not a little bit more, in taxes as like the average European. It blows my mind, actually. Yeah. And I don't get free healthcare, but I digress. Whew, I made a song. Let's hop on over the video.
Educational and musical, baby.
Ooh.
There are 3 beliefs about life in the U.S. There are 3 beliefs about life in the U.S. that Americans, including us, tend to grow up with.
I think we didn't even realize the extent to how ingrained these ideas are in the psyche of Americans until after we left the U.S.
Yeah.
It's almost a little like brainwashing.
A little bit. But now that we live abroad in France, we realize that these almost universally held American beliefs aren't really so true. Hi, I'm Raina.
I'm Jason.
And we're back at home.
When you grew up in the...
We got them both wrong.
Raina, and what was the guy's name?
Jason. We guessed their names when it showed them because I was like, she looks like a Nancy and he looks like a Scott. And then I said, what do you think their names are? And he said, Scott and Nancy.
Scott and Nancy was bang on.
So
Raina and Jason.
We definitely, if we both agreed on it, they definitely look like those names fit them. I wouldn't have picked Raina and Jason, but I like them. Nice names.
In the U.S., you're surrounded by American flags. You recite the Pledge of Allegiance every day in school, right? And you're told both directly and indirectly all the time that the U.S. does everything the best. But then when you move somewhere else, for us it was France, you realize that lots of other places in the world actually do a little better.
Yeah, it sounds so ridiculous and egotistical, I know, but when you grow up in a country as big and as isolated from other countries as the U.S. is, you just really genuinely don't know and haven't seen anything different.
Yeah.
Then when you do see those other places and you realize like, whoa, there's places where people have like universal high quality healthcare and affordable education, and it's statistically much safer than the U.S. Like, it really just shocks your American brain.
Yeah.
There's also this like weird, pervasive belief that because the U.S. is the greatest country on earth, if they haven't figured it out, probably no one has.
Yeah. This can include some really basic things, even like basic water sanitation.
Yep.
We had friends and family that came and visited us here in France recently, and they had to ask if they could drink the water. They'd actually brought with them a whole set of advanced water purification equipment, and they were brushing their teeth with bottled water at first before we...
But I mean, to be fair, Deli Belly's the thing.
I'm worried about that in the United States even. We moved to Florida and we moved to a new spot and I was like, can we drink the water here? It's not even necessarily because you're just being like shady in a way where you're just assuming that it's bad, but there is a lot of bad water that's not really good to drink in a lot of even okay areas. So it's just better to be safe. Yeah. I mean, I'm like that everywhere I go.
I'm a water snob.
Yeah.
Yeah. We buy, for the longest time in Colorado until I got a water filtration system because we were getting it from the city. We bought bottled waters for like a year and a half, and it cost a ridiculous amount of money to.
But the city
hold
had
up.
previously had water issues and they had
Yeah.
fixed them, but we were just leery enough that we were like, I don't want to risk it. And that's just how it is.
But I get what they're trying to say though, is that they're living abroad and like their friends and family who visit, they're concerned about the water sanitization. And I think that's kind of an ode to, the ignorance of Americans who haven't been abroad. I mean, I'm one of them. I've never been overseas. I've never traveled to Europe or anywhere outside other than like Canada.
Yeah.
I've been to Canada and there was, it's tough because like they said, it's a very isolated country, meaning you only really have Canada and Mexico near it. And I mean, people are going to say, well, Russia, but I mean, realistically, the people that are in the heart of America, they're probably never going to travel in their life.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't. But there are also a lot of places that are well known to be where you don't drink the water if you go there. So,
but I did think that was an interesting thing that they wanted to bring up was the water sanitization. Like, of course, France has figured out the water thing, you know?
Yeah, right.
It's like, that's kind of naive. I'll admit that's a little naive. I would be taken back by that.
Family that came and visited us here in France recently, and they had to ask if they could drink the water. They'd actually brought with them a whole set of advanced water purification equipment, and they were brushing their teeth with bottled water at first before we could talk to them and assure them the tap water is perfectly safe.
France is another advanced country.
Yeah.
And we thought this was actually even more funny because Evian water from Evian, France sells in the US for like $5 a bottle. And so when you're in the US, you can drink French water, but not when you're in France. I don't know. Struck us as a little funny.
Yeah. You know, another commonly held American truism is that Americans are somehow just more free than people in other democracies. You know, even our national anthem, which we sing all the time, it includes the line, you know, the land of the free, the home of the brave. But what does that land of the free actually mean?
Right.
What liberties exactly do people have in the U.S. that they don't have in so many other places around the world?
Yeah.
You know, not long ago, we heard someone describe the difference in how Europeans and Americans view freedom. And it really struck home. It really captured the spirit of, I think, what we've observed here. You know, I think that Americans want the freedom to, you know, the freedom to carry a gun, to do what they want, when they want, to practice their religion openly, to choose how to spend all their money.
Yeah, and the contrast to that was the idea that Europeans are looking more, they see freedoms from. So freedom from the threat of violence, freedom from dying lack of due to health care, freedom from having a religion imposed on them, freedom from pollution and toxins in their environment and food. So I don't know, we were talking about this concept of what American freedom is. Feels like it's become really extreme in the last few years. Meaning in the US now, like certain groups expect their own personal freedoms to trump everything else, no matter the cost to society or their fellow Americans.
Yeah, and
so that whole freedom from and freedom to is an excellent illustration and an excellent perspective. I mean, that is so true to a T.
Yeah.
To a T. And it is really and I don't know. I'm trying to think, because obviously I only know what in my lifetime, right? So I'm like, how far it goes back to our independence, I would assume that whole mindset of freedom to do whatever was ingrained in the establishment and of our society and our culture of America, because it is true. That's what we deem as freedom, is the ability to do whatever. And it is true. We kind of do have the ability to do everything except murder, basically. You could pretty much get away with like literally anything you could. People have their freedoms, and the freedom from aspect, and especially in like a modern society like 2025, I would expect every freedoms that I have in America, with the exception of guns, like I get that, would be the same in any other developed country.
But I do think it's interesting, the specific things that she mentioned, like freedom from having toxins and poisons in your food and things like that.
Right.
And it's like, that's true. That's not something we're free from. I mean, we've got the worst food there is anywhere. And I mean, that's just one prime example. But I do think that was a very, very interesting perspective.
So I'll give you a good argument. And this is not a good argument. It's a capitalistic argument. Is you have the freedom to choose to eat those foods or not. You could do your research and find healthy organic options out there. The problem is at a cost.
Yeah, and they're less available and they're way more costly. And with so many people being on state and governmental aid, I mean, a lot of people don't have that option.
Yeah, no, they don't. And it's crazy that like state and government, so we have a lot of people don't, I think there's like some kind of misconception that Americans don't have things like, we do have social resources out there for people who need it, like food stamps and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with food stamps, it is a government assistance, and it is something that people get if they qualify or deem need it. But you can't buy healthy food with it. Like you could buy like the necessities of like milk, water, bread, things like that. But everyday grocery items, there's some things where like a bag of Cheetos will be okay, but like a bag of broccoli is.
Yeah, I think there's certain stipulations and things that are covered and things that aren't, and I don't really know how it works, but
yeah, I do like they're from, because when you look at it from a statement like freedom from, tyranny, from, toxins, it's like a bigger issue than kind of like I have a freedom to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It
sounds very give or take almost in a way. And I think freedom from just sounds a lot better.
Yeah, it does.
As an American, the intensity of this individualism, I think it can color how you view the policies of the other countries out there.
Definitely.
Because you don't always realize or have the context to realize that these policies, they might mean different forms of freedom and still make for a more stable, fair, open, and enjoyable society.
Yeah. So, lastly, the thing that has changed that we see differently now is quality of life and how we define it. In the US, when we lived there, versus now in France and Europe. When I was a kid in the US, my definition of like what quality of life or growing up and being able to have a good life was, it kind of revolved around how much money I could make when I grew up. That sounds embarrassingly materialistic. And it kind of is. Yeah. But the honest thing is to be able to buy more, bigger, nicer, better things. It's just like a big focus of American culture. You see it on TV and movies and advertisements. So, that soaks in even when you're a kid. Mm-hmm. The house you can buy, the car you can drive, the size of the TV you have. If you buy your clothes or your candles from like certain shops, that all kind of paints a picture and defines if you have a good quality of life.
Yes. 100,000, 200,000%. Yes, we are groomed, conditioned. This American dream is so materialistic and the basis of success.
Yeah.
I think it's true because even the poorest of people will prioritize their money, whatever amount, on materialistic items over necessities, which I think is mind-blowing, but it is so true. I'm not really a materialistic person.
No.
I have clothing. I have, priceless things that I obtained throughout my life that like I cherish, but I know people who definitely are all about like the more money you have, like just because of the nature of my job, it's a high paying job. And I see this every day.
Yeah.
I see this every day. One of the craziest things is she was talking about candles, and I knew she was like the Yankee candles. And you see the fads with like Hey Dude shoes or Stanley cups. It's like, that shit is so stupid. Why are you buying a Stanley tumbler just because of the name brand? And it's just so fascinating that Americans are so, it's weird that we're like this.
But it is really bad. And I mean, I think Stanley Cup is a really, really good example of that because they're really popular. Or same for the Starbucks cups. They're really popular just because of the name, and they're expensive for no reason. It was last year your sister asked you if you thought I would like a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
For Christmas. And you were like, would you like a Stanley Cup? And I was like, hell no. Why do I want a cup that costs $45? I can get a perfectly good cup that costs $8 that looks the same, and it's going to probably work better. But it is. I mean, it's ingrained at a very young age. You know, you go to school in elementary school, even as a 7-year-old. And if your backpack looks like it's been previously used or your shoes aren't new, you get teased by kids that are, 7, 8 years old. It's just, it starts very young. It's terrible.
I don't even know. And I don't even know what a society looks like that isn't materialistic.
No.
So
I would like to.
I would like to as well. I would like to live among people that just like don't give an F.
Because that's how we feel.
Yeah.
And you do get people like that. It's not like all of every American and everybody in the United States is materialistic and feels that way. It is a big majority because it's just how the country is. It's how it's ingrained. It's how it's been for years and years and years and years. But there are a lot of people like us who don't feel that way. So it would be nice to live somewhere where the experience with that is just very different. And you can just, and same, it goes back to, we've done some videos where we talk about here you live to work instead of work to live. And it kind of goes hand in hand with that, just to be able to enjoy your day-to-day life, work when you need to, pay your bills, that kind of stuff, and not have to worry about making as much money as you can so you can impress your coworkers and drive the nicest car so you don't get picked on by other kids at school and things like that. It's ridiculous.
And it's funny because I think me and Taylor, we're the type of people that would be considered hippies in America because we value nature and experiences. Mm-hmm. So like there was seriously a time where we wanted to sell everything we owned and buy an RV and just travel the country. And that's
still the dream.
It's still the dream. We have a child now, so we need a little bit more stability for him, but
for now.
But yeah, like, I don't know where our society failed us. It's a capitalistic society, and the capitalism is the reason for all this.
Yep.
Because in capitalism right now, America is run by big corporations. The whole democracy, the whole government, that's a facade. That is not real. We're actually being controlled by these big corporations that are using Americans as we're just feeding them profits. Mm-hmm. Like that's all we're here to do. We're numbers on a spreadsheet and we're just puppets feeding them profits for their companies to get bigger for eternity. Like, I don't know what's happening, but that's why we're in a predicament we're in. So yeah, rich versus poor, love it.
U.S. culture.
Yeah, I think, and maybe in other words, being visibly wealthy is just a stand-in for quality of life in the U.S. So I think American people will sometimes say that the quality of life is lower in Europe. And why? Because that's what you can see. Europeans tend to make less money, have lower incomes. They live in smaller houses. They have fewer cars. They have tiny refrigerators. There's often no clothes dryers. What kind of place is this?
See this video.
Yeah. But we've come to understand that Europeans tend to have, I think they tend to be wealthier than Americans in two really distinct ways. Mm-hmm. That might be hard to see from the outside, but probably define quality of life better than a simple GDP number or, the number of seats in your SUV might capture. I think Europeans tend to have both more time and more peace of mind.
Yeah. I mean, I am not saying in any way that the French or Europeans in general they don't have worries, or they're like sitting around eating bonbons, or they never want to buy some, Air Jordans or an American sized fridge.
Yeah.
None of that. But there's one really big difference I think that we've seen, and that is Europeans tend to have a value system around personal time and a social system that around basic human needs that support well-being.
Yeah, those two things, they come together for a quality of life that might be really hard to value on a graph or a balance sheet, the way you could, the stuff maybe in your house could be captured.
Yeah.
And what does those two things look like in France? There's just a deep respect for your free time to be able to spend with family and to do things for pleasure or maybe just intellectual interest.
Yeah.
This might mean that businesses are open for fewer hours, that work weeks are a little shorter, and workers generally get 5 weeks of vacation per year. And this all adds up to like more time for meals with family, more, access to high quality food. These are all things that are seen as essential parts of life.
Yeah.
I'm also not up at night worrying about how am I going to pay and buy my insulin? How am I going to pay for my daughter's education going forward?
So, again, it's not that life is easy, but there's a sense of ease and safety that I feel here in France that was just missing in the U.S. And, this peace of mind feels worth way more than that overpriced Pottery Barn comforter ever did in the U.S.
Yeah, wealth as the U.S. glamorizes it with more, and flashier stuff. It just doesn't look the same to me now. And overcoming the idea that no one anywhere does anything better than the U.S., that Americans are somehow freer, or that America is the only place to find a high quality of life.
I wanted to make a comment on that because they said something similar at the beginning, and I was trying to save it for the end, and then we got halfway through and I had already lost the comment. But I think that is this is not me getting defensive here, but we get a lot of comments about how Americans think that America is the best country in the world and that American things are all better. I think that's a very stereotypical, broad statement.
Yeah.
I do think obviously there are those people here, just like you're going to find those people in probably every country.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe there's more of them here.
Very patriotic.
Very patriotic. Yeah. And there are some people that are brainwashed to think that, this country is the best and that everything is done the best here and always will be. But the majority of the people do not actually feel that way.
I tend to agree. I think that there's, and maybe it's the opposite. Maybe there's a subset of naive and ignorant people that still fall on this illusion that America is the greatest. But I don't know if you guys have seen the news lately. Like America is crushing on the weight of its poverty.
Yeah.
Like we are struggling as a country. The citizens are feeling the brunt of all that. People can't buy houses. People can't buy food. And when all these things start to compile, that whole, I don't want to say patriotism, kind of goes out the window.
Yeah. And the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are at each other's throats right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are not happy.
They're very disenfranchised.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people wanting to leave the country. It's not just because there's issues at the moment. That's just an example to say that it's a very unrealistic statement that all Americans or that Americans think that. It's just very, very generalized. And again, the mass majority of people don't actually feel that way.
Yeah, I don't think we're that naive to think. I think there's a lot of adults in the room that are probably like, yeah, I know our country's not that great, and I'm pretty sure everywhere else is probably fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Probably okay. And you know what? Systems work in other countries and systems work here. It's...
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it.
How freer, or that America is the only place to find a high quality of life. These are all just myths that living abroad has kind of dismantled for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're hesitating to make the jump to live abroad, but it's your dream, don't let these internal beliefs that we as Americans kind of all get brainwashed into our whole lives. Don't let that stop you, because you know what? You're American. You're very optimistic. You can do anything. And sometimes that means moving. Thanks for
I'm
watching.
ready.
Abiento.
Abiento.
So that was actually a really good video.
Baguette bound.
Baguette bound.
Love it.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. Jason and Raina. Really liked that video. I think that their perspectives was a little bit different than something that would be anti-American propaganda. I would say it was very based on real like experiences that they had, you know, and their observations about this whole thing. Their point, and I'll say one thing about Americans is we are very optimistic. Like they kind of mentioned in the, you know, we're dreamers. You know, we always have hopes and dreams, and we all have ambition. And, you know, if you put your mind to it, we're probably going to figure out a way to do it, because our living here is very tough.
Yeah.
Living here is not for the faint of heart. They had a saying back where if you can make it in the Big Apple in New York, you can make it anywhere in the world. It's the Big Apple has become literally every state.
Yeah.
Because it's just so difficult to survive in this country because of all of the negative impacts and all the negative decisions that, you know, policy decisions that have kind of hurt Americans. She mentioned, it, you know, if you had a dream, but these myths are, I mean, that's kind of indicating again that, like, yeah, not all Americans think this way. You know,
that's definitely not what's been holding me back.
Yeah.
I've been ready for years and years and years to move abroad.
And I will say the propaganda, the, all the stuff, the brainwashing that American has, I think that is shifting with every generation.
Yeah. 100%.
I think millennials are having kids and they're like not telling their, you know, for the independence is not in schools, by the way. The majority of schools like stop doing that.
Or it's at least not required.
It's not required, and most schools really aren't. I had kids going up in school in the school system, and they didn't have it because they understand that, like, not all religions or not all people believe in this. I feel like the brainwashing and the propaganda is starting to peel its way back, and I think there's so much hope, especially for Gen Z. So Gen Z went through COVID. Probably the most impacted by COVID by far was Gen Z, because, you know, they're in their most prominent social time in their life, and then they had to stay at home. But a lot of those things, like, you know, a lot of those ads, those brainwashing mechanisms that America used to deploy on its citizens are just no longer relevant anymore, right? No one listens to the radio. No one watches traditional TV. We all have Hulu streaming devices.
Yeah.
Like, we're all watching Netflix. So how are you brainwashing our kids? You know, like, how are you getting into them if the traditional sources that you've deployed is no longer there?
And the younger generations are also the ones that are much more willing and excited to leave the country and go out and travel and experience new places. So
Yeah.
I think that also makes a really big difference.
I'm really excited for the future. I think that we are growing to be more of a globalist country in a lot of ways in the future. I don't think we're there yet. I think we need a couple of generations to either cease to exist or for just letting the younger generations move up the chain, right? So anyways, you guys, that was 3 American myths we don't believe anymore after living in Europe by Baguette Bound. You have anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so.
Guys, check out their channel. We'll have links in the description for you to go check them out. Give them a like, sub, comment on this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.